For generations, a lot of Christians have shared their faith using this really simple four-step formula. It's super clear, it's memorable, and hey, it's based on scripture. But what if that simple formula, while totally true, is just a tiny little piece of a much bigger, much more epic story? What if it's the finger pointing at a cosmic moon that we've kind of been missing? All right, let's get into this. So we're going to walk through this whole thing in 4 acts. First, we'll look at that familiar miniature version of the gospel that a lot of us know. Then we're going to zoom out, way out, to redefine the problem as living in occupied territory. After that, we'll see the solution as this incredible cosmic invasion and victory. And finally, we'll see how all of this completely reframes the personal invitation. Okay, so let's start with something familiar. A simple framework, a well-worn path for explaining faith. But the big question is it the whole picture, or is it just one important piece of the puzzle? I mean, it's a real challenge, isn't it? How do you take this vast, ancient, complex story and boil it down into something simple and accessible? Well, usually you create a tool, a kind of summary. And for millions of people, that tool has been the Romans Road. It's this clean 4-step summary using verses pulled from the book of Romans. The problem? Personal sin. The consequence of that sin? Death. The solution? Christ's death. And the response? Confession. It's logical, it's easy to remember, but the material we're looking at today argues that this very popular method has a really fundamental problem. And this quote just brilliantly nails the critique. Look, the problem isn't that these verses aren't true. They absolutely are. The issue is that they've been pulled out of a much, much larger cosmic-level argument that the Apostle Paul was making. So by focusing only on these 4 points, we might be missing the giant, luminous moon that they were designed to point to all along. So if we want to see that moon, we have to zoom out and start where the biblical story actually begins. And this means we have to redefine the core problem itself, not just as a personal moral failure, but as a cosmic state of being. This bigger story, it starts long before our personal choices. According to some really key texts, like Deuteronomy 32, after the rebellion at the Tower of Babel, the nations of the world were essentially handed over, placed under the jurisdiction of lesser divine beings. But here's the catch. These spiritual governors went rogue. They became corrupt and hostile, turning their assigned territories against the one true king. Now, this is where things get really interesting. This slide reframes everything. View 1, the one we're maybe more familiar with, presents the problem as you, individually messing up in a kind of neutral world. But view 2 says the problem is structural. It says you were born into a conflict you didn't start, a captive living in territory ruled by hostile powers. Your personal sins, they happen inside that much larger context of captivity. So this cosmic problem, it sets up this single, epic story that runs like a spine through the entire Bible. It all kicks off with the nations being handed over at Babel. Then it continues with God's promise to Abraham to start reversing that whole decision. It hits its climax with the decisive victory at the cross, and then it launches the counteroffensive at Pentecost. You see? It's all one cohesive story. And this brings us to the solution. And in this telling of the story, the solution isn't some quiet legal transaction happening in a courtroom. Oh no, it's loud. It's a full-scale military campaign, a cosmic D-Day invasion designed to win back everything that was lost. So the crucial point here is that Jesus isn't just presented as a moral fixer, someone who tidies up our personal accounts. No, he is the cosmic victor. The biblical argument is that he was uniquely positioned to be both the divine commander and the human soldier. The sources we're looking at call him the visible Yahweh. That's the name for God in Israel's scriptures, making him the only being who could enter occupied territory as one of the captives in order to set them all free. So the central event of this invasion, the cross, gets reframed as this brilliant military ambush. The hostile spiritual powers, they thought they were destroying their enemy. But like the Apostle Paul writes, if they had actually understood God's plan, they would never have crucified the Lord of glory. The cross was a trap that disarmed them and put their defeat on public display for the entire cosmos to see. And right after the ambush comes the pivotal moment, the resurrection. Now, this wasn't just proof that Jesus was who he said he was. It was the actual mechanism of victory. It's the thing that reversed the enemy's ultimate weapon, death, at its very root, buying back the life that humanity had forfeited way back in the beginning. After the victory, of course, comes the coronation. The ascension wasn't just Jesus returning to heaven. It was his formal enthronement. It was the public declaration that the victor was now officially on his throne, with every single rival cosmic power and authority now defeated and put under his feet. And finally, we get to Pentecost. Think of this as D-Day. This is the launch of the ground invasion to reclaim the planet. The miracle of people speaking different languages is seen as a direct reversal of the confusion at Babel, signaling that God is now gathering all the scattered nations back to himself. The Spirit empowers agents to march into enemy territory and announce that the rightful king has won the war. So, what does this grand cosmic war story mean for you and for me? Well, it brings this entire epic down to a very personal and a very urgent invitation. You see, it's the only way out of occupied territory. This slide just lays it all out so perfectly. You can really see the shift in perspective. The problem, it goes from just personal sin to cosmic captivity. Jesus' role, it shifts from a moral fixer to a cosmic victor. The cross becomes less of a quiet legal transaction and more of a loud military triumph. And the invitation, it's not just to accept a pardon, but to transfer your entire allegiance to the winning side. And this brings us to the logic of why it's so exclusive. In this framework, there's only one path out because the required solution was a totally unique, unrepeatable cosmic event. No philosophy, no religion, no self-improvement program can disarm hostile spiritual powers or reverse death itself. Only the invasion, victory, and enthronement of the one cosmic king could ever accomplish that. So, the crucial takeaway here is this. The invitation of the gospel becomes a call to defect. It's an offer to have your citizenship transferred, to literally change which cosmic kingdom you belong to. It's a conscious choice to swear your allegiance to the victor, who has already won the war for your freedom. And that leaves all of us with a final and pretty unavoidable question. If this cosmic story is actually true, if the world really is occupied territory and a war has already been won for its reclamation, well, that forces a decision. It asks each and every one of us to consider our allegiance. Whose side are you on?